Today on the podcast, we have Jennifer Bailey talking about ukulele in the elementary music. Jennifer Bailey is an elementary music educator with 28 years of classroom experience. She holds a Bachelor of Music in Flute Performance from Michigan State University, teacher certification from the University of Houston, and Master's in Music Education from Temple University. Jennifer serves in the faculty of the Gordon Institute for Music Learning, where she teaches elementary and early childhood music professional development certification levels. She served on the General Music Council for the National Association for Music Education and was named the 2018 Music Educator of the Year by the Michigan Music Educators Association. Jennifer is author of the Sing to Kids blog and has authored several books with publications. Jennifer is a frequent presenter at state and regional music education conferences and will be presenting inside that music teacher community in December. I am so excited for this conversation with Jennifer Bailey, so let's go ahead and jump right into it.
You're listening to That Music Podcast with Bryson Tarvin, the curriculum designer and educational consultant behind That Music Teacher and the Elementary Music Summit. Each week, Bryson and his guests will dive into the reality of being an elementary music teacher and how music can truly be transformative in the lives of the students you serve. Show notes and resources mentioned in this episode can be found at thatmusicteacher.com.
Welcome back to That Music Podcast. I am super excited to have a guest on the podcast. It's been a while since we've had a guest, and we're going to be talking about something that's really important and a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to have Jennifer Bailey. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us on That Music Teacher Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get started, can you do us a favor and can you introduce yourself a little bit, share a little bit about your background in music education and really what got you into using ukulele in the classroom?
Sure. Well, I'm in my 28th year of teaching elementary music. I teach here in Farmington, Michigan, although I've taught both in Houston, Texas, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and have only ever taught elementary music. I started teaching ukulele in my classroom about 10 years ago. I had a good friend of mine who had shared that she was using it in the middle school, and I thought, what a lovely instrument, and just how accessible it was for young children to be able to learn and play music in the classroom. And so I began working and learning the instrument for myself first, because as all things, I want to make sure that I could play it, and then began introducing it to my students as well.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I started playing the ukulele when I was in college, and fell in love, especially for a string instrument, how accessible it was and how easy it was to get started. And that's why when, long story short, I was thinking like, all right, do I want to do guitars or do I want to ukuleles? Well, I think it's going to be a lot, especially my fifth and sixth graders, to be able to grab ukuleles instead, and that's where we are. So you mentioned a little bit about how kind of what that you saw success in it. A little bit into some of the benefits that you've seen when you're using the ukulele in your classroom.
Well, I think the biggest thing for my students is they see themselves as musicians. The minute they pick up that instrument, they are transformed. They see their favorite musicians, whether they're country singers or rock performers or whatever, and they're all playing an instrument. And so to pick up that ukulele and feel like they're holding a string instrument and able to play it right away and have success feeds into the thing that I'm constantly trying to build in them, which is that they are musicians, and that no matter how they choose to express music in their life or enjoy music in their life, that there is music in them all the time. And so that was the first thing that I noticed, is that when I would give them this instrument and there would be this instant connection and they would want to play right away. And so that's where I thought, okay, let's take this and let's run with it and get them excited. And then I'm going to, like every good parent or teacher does, I'm going to just throw in as many musical concepts and skills in there in that instrument unit that we're doing, to make sure that they are learning everything they can about music, as well as playing an instrument and getting joy from that.
I love that. I love how you brought in, like, you're right. They're the people that they are kind of looking forward to and looking up to and tend to play an instrument. So this is a great way to get started in that. I want to take a step back real quick. How long have you been using the ukulele in your classroom, and what grade or grades do you use them with?
So I've been using the instrument for about 10 years. I begin ukulele with my third graders, and we just do some basic strumming patterns. They learn a C7 chord, and they do a couple play-alongs with me. In fourth grade, we kind of go back and review that again, what we've learned in the previous year, and we learned the C chord, this F chord. We learn a bunch of little folk tunes that are just 1 5-chord songs. And really, like third grade and fourth grade, I just want to get their interest going and get them excited about the instrument. We don't spend a lot of time. It's usually my last unit that I do in May with my kiddos, just before the end of the school year, because I want them to end the year on a high note and to feel good about what they're doing. And then in fifth grade, we dig deep into ukulele. We play for about 3.5 months. The kids learn about 6 to 8 chords. They learn how to play tabs, so they can play melodies as well as play chords. And then they end our unit with the students form small groups, and they pick a piece of music that they want to learn. And so the wonderful thing about that is they get to work in small groups and collaborate with friends. We get to talk about why a piece of music is a great choice versus maybe not a great choice to play. We can talk about transposition, because they'll pick a piece that maybe isn't in the right key, or maybe the chords are too hard, so we can talk about chord substitution. And then they work to learn that piece over the course of about 3 weeks and perform it for their classmates. And it's such a neat thing, because it brings in student choice and student voice, and they are more excited than they have ever been to play.
Think of a better way to bring in allow students to have that agency and that collaboration than exactly what you just described. I think that's a great way to not only give them choice and to let them work together, but to, I mean, let's be honest, if they're going to do music outside of the classroom, it's probably going to look like that. They're going to have people that come together and saying, hey, let's see if we can figure this song out. And I think that's a really, really natural way to bridge that connection that's happening in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And I have to say, I love the way that you're kind of starting when they're kind of building up those prerequisite skills, and so that when you get into fifth grade, you can really dive deep into that. Also, doing it in May, brilliant. Great way to keep them engaged, to keep everything going. That, I think that's so many gems in what you just said, that I can't get over.
Well, thank you.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the things that we've seen, because I echo a lot of what you said. I've only had ukuleles since the beginning of the year, but I've loved what I've been seeing and what my students have been able to do with them. But what are some of the common obstacles that you've seen or that teachers might face when they're getting started with using the instrument in the classes? And what are some ways that they can get over that and overcome it so that they can set their kids up for?
Well, I mean, I think there are 2 sets of obstacles we face as teachers. One is just the management of those instruments and making sure that they are ready for use. So when you get new ukuleles, it takes a long time to get those strings stretched, to get them in tune, to have a system where kids always get the same instrument, so that there is some accountability for the student if the instrument is suddenly tuned in a key that has never been used before. And so I think having systems in place as a teacher to be organized and to be able to keep track of all of those instruments and make sure everything is in tune. The other thing I think is really important is just predicting and being aware of how you're going to handle student challenges when they arise. So when I first started, I did not put any markers on the ukuleles for chords. I really wanted students to know where their fingers go and be able to learn and memorize, kind of have that muscle memory as to how the chords would go. that took me about a year before I realized, you know what, not every kid is ready for that. And so some of the things I do to help students just to avoid those challenges is I mark the first 3 chords we learn on the instrument. So we learn I mark the C chord, the F chord, and the G chord so that they have a visual for them, because you have students that need it. And what I found is that the students who don't need that visual anymore don't use it. And so it's just there for the kids that need it and not there. You're going to get a lot of pushback from kiddos about fingers hurting. And so you're going to learn how to pace your instruction to give them breaks frequently. I don't like to start my kids with picks unnecessarily because I want them to build a little callus and a little strength in those fingers. But I also don't want blisters. So we talk about how we pace our instruction and make sure that when we are going to be playing for extended periods of times, we make picks available for students. We talk about how to strum and make sure that they can handle it without playing too strongly. And then the last thing, just with any instrument, is the perseverance, because there comes a point where the excitement about playing the instrument and the reality of playing that instrument merge. And you have some kids that will give up very easily. And so we talk a lot about perseverance and really helping kids to see that they can push through hard things. They can do hard things, even in music. And oftentimes we boost kids' confidence by having them work with friends and get support from one another versus the teacher, because I find more than anything, my students really learn best when they're working collaboratively with their friends.
I'm over here smiling and nodding my head because basically everything you just described is things that I've been experiencing these past few months. I was actually just this morning was recording and things I wish I would have done differently. And one of them was I numbered all the ukuleles, but then didn't assign them to anyone. And I'm like, well, I did half of the work, but then now I get, things that you're like, oh, it went out of tune. This is not out of tune. This is very, very, someone was messing with this. So that's definitely something that I wish I would have done differently, just to have that, again, that ownership over, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing with them? And you brought up a lot of really good gems about just how we can keep the kids engaged, how we can make sure it's accessible, because while I do think the ukulele is an incredibly accessible string instrument, the reality is that doesn't mean we don't have to differentiate. We still have to make those accommodations and modifications. And my favorite part about what you just said is the thing that I will scream from wherever about differentiation is the student need that accommodation they'll just not use it. And it's again removing that barrier. It's not barriers anywhere else. I don't know what else to say about how awesome that response was.
Well, and I think the lovely thing about ukulele is that you can differentiate at so many different levels. I may have a student who has never played before, and all they can do is play that C chord. And you know what? That's what you do through the entire song. And then I have some kids that we move to a new chord. We learn, right now my 5th graders are reviewing the F chord. And all they can do is hang on to that chord for dear life. And so I have those new kids on the C chord. I have those kids that are hanging on for dear life on the F chord. And then I have those high flyers that want that extra challenge. And then they can facilitate and move between those 2 chords or a 3rd chord. And so the lovely thing is you can build layers of instruction for anyone. And one of my favorite things to do is have kids turn to one another, and I have them certify each other that they can play a certain chord. Awesome. So they don't come up and play necessarily for me, but they have to be certified by a classmate that they can play that chord. And so again, that goes that ownership of I have to show somebody, I have to show a peer that I can do this, and they take it so much more seriously, and they're so much more kind to one another if there is a need for correction. That I find that just goes so lovely. But there's so many ways you can differentiate instruction on ukulele.
Before we continue, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by the Steady Beat Survival Guide. In this free ebook, we'll dive into my top 20 songs, chants, and activities for Steady Beat so that you can truly build the strong foundation of musical understanding that is just so incredibly important when we're talking about a concept so core like Steady Beat. To grab your free copy of this ebook, head on over to thatmusicteacher.com/steadybeat, or you can check out the description wherever you're listening. Now let's dive back into the episode. So you talked a little bit about kind of the types of music or what kind of songs and things that you've used in the past, but where do you get your repertoire? And I guess kind of off of that, how do you weave a ukulele curriculum into your overall scope and sequence?
Well, the funny thing is, uh, the truth is about fourth grade, my students learn that I have been weaving this evil plan of instruction over years. So we do a lot of folk songs in K through 2, obviously. I mean, I do folk music all through my K-5 curriculum. But about third grade, we do a little piano unit in the winter, and every student, we do class piano, and every student learns to play 4 to 6 tunes, and simple tunes, Hot Cross Buns, Mary Had a Little Lamb, things like that. Then fourth grade recorder comes by, and guess what? All those tunes reappear in recorder. And by the time they get to ukulele, they're like, oh, I already know what tunes we're learning to play. So the lovely thing is I try to mix both folk songs that they are familiar with and pop music that they love, so that they get a mix of, they're playing things that are going to build skills within their playing, and songs that are familiar, and then also layer in things where they feel like they're playing music that they love to listen to on the radio, because that's where the connection comes and the joy comes. With the folk music, one of the things I found really successful for my kids, because every once in a while I'll get a group of fifth graders like, oh, I don't want to play this baby song anymore. And I'm like, wait a minute. First of all, that's not what we call folk music. But second of all, we have buddy groups in our school where they are paired with lower elementary classes. And so I always present it as, you're going to learn this song, and then you're going to come in and play it for your buddy class.
I love that.
So that then they have a day where, like, if my fifth graders are paired with their first or second grade class, they get to come into that first or second grade class and they play their ukulele. They play the songs that those students know and love. So that's a really lovely way to get some buy-in for the folk music. So that they are playing songs and they know they're going to be presenting them to their lower L buddies. And the other lovely thing is that they also let those students strum the instrument. They'll play the chords and they let them strum. So it kind of builds that excitement, like, ooh, this is something coming down the way. So I find that finding that nice mix of giving them folk music that's going to build their capacity to play, and then we end every class with one pop song play along, so that they have something where they feel like they're strumming and playing like they're little ukulele rock stars.
I absolutely love that. I have a very similar approach to recorder in the same way of but I also how you're always ending on this high note, always ending on this big, pop song or something that they're able to have experience. In general, I think sometimes we as music teachers get wrong is we work so hard on the skills and we work on the fundamentals that we don't give them that win. And that's where the engagement's lost. You can do scales all day, any day. But if you're able to let the kids play a song, especially on the first day, like that is huge. So I think you're bringing up so many good points.
Well, and that's for me, like, I teach chords right off the bat because I want them to feel like they're playing and they're strumming. And I know that there are others who really want students to learn tab and to be able to play pitches and play songs. There is no wrong way. For me, I just want that win where they want to come back and play the next day. And I can always go back and embed all of that instruction later on and get them excited about the other. But what I want them is to always leave wanting to come back and see what's going to happen next.
I love that. So you're going to be leading a master class inside that music teacher community called Instruction for Elementary Music. Can you talk a little bit about what the attend in that workshop and kind of how you plan to kind of take the master class and make it applicable to classrooms around the world?
Yeah, so my goal for you is just to share my sequence of instruction and to give you ideas to be able to go back into your classroom and use that with your students. I'm going to walk you through my sequence. I'm going to share from my many, many mistakes as well as my successes so that you hopefully can use it and do the best with your students as you possibly can, and make new mistakes. And I only say that because I think we learn most and learn best from the things that we do wrong instead of the things we do well. So I'm going to be walking you through my sequence of instruction and how to get students situated so that you can teach 30 kids how to play ukulele all at once, and maximize your time with your students so that you can get the most and the best out of them.
And for those of you that are listening that are not part of that music teacher community, you can join us for the live workshop next week, or it will be added to the live professional development library inside the community if you're listening to this a little bit after it came out. So, Jennifer, if you could summarize your key takeaways from your 10 years of experience with ukulele into some key takeaways, what are some things that you would make sure that teachers are starting with to make sure that they're making the best of what they have?
I think the first thing I'm going to tell you is to just enjoy your students and to find ways to make it fun and joyful. All instruction can be, I hate the word rigorous, but you can do all of the hard things. You can teach all of the technique, but if it's not joyful, the students aren't going to buy into it. So that is my first takeaway, is that you have to be joyful with this and make it fun with your kids. Second is, don't be afraid to be a stickler to teach the technique also. I really work with my students to make sure that they're holding the instrument correctly, that they're strumming correctly, that they are strumming gently. I think sometimes they get so excited to play, and I'm like, back off, guys. We're not going to break a string today. So getting them to play musically, I think, is the other thing I really want them to be mindful of, so that they're always making music. Because there's a difference between making sound and making music. And so yes. I really want to make sure that they are learning how to play the instrument in a way that it sounds musical and it's enjoyable to them. And then I want to empower them to continue on in the instrument, so that if it's something that it brings them that personal joy, that they'll continue to practice. My students can check out ukuleles and take them home and have them for personal practice. We have a set for school, and then I have some extra ones they can check out and take home. So if it's something that really speaks to them, that they can continue to practice and play. I make a digital notebook available to every student. So if they do have an instrument, they can play at home, and it has embedded all of our play alongs, all of our technique videos, all of our sheet music, so they have access to that wherever they are. And my goal is just for them, again, to find their voice in music. And this is one of the ways I hope. For me, the ukulele, it could be the instrument that they continue to play, but it could also be that starting point for taking another instrument as they move into middle school. So whether they choose to play in band or choose to play in orchestra or continue in choir, to me, this is a great way for them to get some practice of what it entails to learn and play an instrument. And so those are my goals for my students, is to give them opportunities to find joy with it, and give them a little taste of what's to come if they choose to pursue an instrument in their lives.
I couldn't agree with that anymore if I tried. So, Jennifer, where can our listeners find more about you and the work that you do for music education online?
Well, everything I do is Sing to Kids. I have a blog at singtokids.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And again, if you just Google Sing to Kids, you'll find me.
Alrighty. Well, we will be sure to put those links in the show notes, as well as the link to join that music teacher community so they can check out your masterclass, which I am really excited for. I am super excited. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for another episode of That Music Podcast.